With that, we'll go ahead and get started. Since this is our third one of these, I don't think we necessarily need to do any introductions this go round. I think you know our guests, myself, Dan Havermail, and Jason Green as well. So we'll get right into the questions. This one is going to be a little bit more focused on AI education and literacy. It's a common request that we received from a lot of you all, whether it's for yourselves personally, for specific roles in the company, or for your company overall. Where do we start? How do we continue down that path? So we'll start off kind of first and foremost, Jason, just kind of broad strokes here, right? We spent the last decade really making sure everyone is digitally literate, right? Able to use a computer, to type, to use Zoom, to get out of pen and paper. Now we're rapidly entering this AI age. How is AI literacy different, and why is it no longer an option for frontline employees to not be AI literate?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. With digital literacy and literacy around different types of tools and machines, it is about making use of a tool or a machine and learning how to do that to help you in your work or your life. With AI, though, yes, there are tools with AI, but it's also about learning how AI is going to affect the very nature of the work you do, of the work others do, how AI is going to affect you in your life, how AI will affect society. Now, that sounds a little bit philosophical, but if your workforce doesn't understand the potential for the profound changes underway, they're going to have trouble making the best use of AI and also coming up with ways to bring AI into the organization. And so it's important that everyone is really learning as much as they can about AI as possible. Look, business in many ways has been the same for, we can say, 80 years, 100 years, 150 years. There's certain things about the business and the way we do things that just are the same, and some of that may change now with AI.
Yeah, 100%. And as folks are learning and at their varied stages of literacy, I think there's kind of a lot of kind of quiet anxiety about AI replacing jobs. How, as a leader or someone in the organization, do we kind of take that shift in a culture from a fear to a replacement to an augmentation type mindset?
Yeah, this is something I definitely talk with a lot of CEOs about on a regular basis. And it's really important that you lead with AI organizationally for your staff, for your partners, your vendors, your clients, and that you have your staff understand that they're going to become superheroes. Because in some ways, and that's not that hard for someone to grasp, in some ways that's always the promise of technology, right? Is that your life is easier, that you can do more, that you don't have to necessarily spend as much time working. And I think with AI, if the culture that you're trying to foster is around you're a superhero in the organization, no, we're not firing you, we're not replacing you with AI, but you are now augmented. You're enabled with AI and you're supercharged with AI. I think that's a very different type of message than what everyone is typically hearing in the media and about layoffs because of AI and the robots are taking our jobs. So I think that's really critical. And you can do that by investing in AI tools and AI education, investing in workshops and in a full AI journey that the staff is part of.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like, if a CEO and a leader wants to start an AI literacy, AI training program next week, should they start again with like a company-wide workshop, or is it better to pick a pilot department or some other aspect of training and literacy?
It's a great question. So there's multiple things to do. I mean, one of the easiest things is to get your whole company certified on AI. Now, depending on the size of your organization, you might not roll out right away to 1,000 people. You might roll out to a smaller group. in stages, but having a subscription to something like Section AI, for example, to provide an AI proficiency and certification courses that people can take on demand is a great way to get started. And then, in addition to that, doing workshops and getting tools and having people experiment and learn is also good. It's not one and done with AI. It's not like they're going in, how do you use your CRM to make a report, or how do you enter a help desk ticket, or how do you use Excel, right? It's more like, it's different. It requires a synthesis of information and experience over a period of time. So it's not any one single thing. You have to do a bunch of things together. And then you'll get some aha moments with people.
That makes a lot of sense. And given especially some large organizations and folks may on different tracks, different seniority, different technical aptitudes, you're going to have specialists and kind of more generalists. How, as a leader, do you identify which employees need more kind of deep technical training versus those who just need kind of a high level, more strategic awareness?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of who needs more strategic awareness of AI, look, I would say everyone should try to get as deep with it as possible. Even if you're the CEO, even if you're the CFO, I don't care. Already before AI, every company was becoming more tech enabled, more tech forward, no matter what industry you're in. And I think the deeper you're able to go, the more good questions and ideas you're going to be able to have. Because it has the potential for some profound changes. And a lot of what AI does at the individual leaf node level for an individual is it can really change how they're even doing their work. And so if someone in the organization is proposing something with AI that would 5 years ago, 2 years ago, seem crazy, the more you understand about it, well, it might not be crazy anymore. It might be actually what's required because your competitors are doing it.
And when you're doing this and rolling this out and starting at various levels of literacy and training, how do you measure that any type of training program is actually being successful and working? Are we looking at hours saved, or are there other like deeper metrics like decision quality and other things that folks should be tracking?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can definitely measure hours saved, which work well for a lot of like manual type processes that you may automate or use AI for. There's also ROIs is the best one. Like if you have something that's being done and you're able to measure a savings of a specific dollar amount, also very useful. Okay, those are obvious things. We already measure those things in business. I'd say the third thing to measure, which is not exactly tied directly per se to cost savings or revenue, is time dilation or time contraction, maybe is a better term. So let's think of something. There's lots of tasks. There's lots of strategic tasks. There's strategic tasks that are for an executive at a strategic, okay, I got to make this plan or this thing. But there's actually a lot of strategic kind of things that are happening with individuals in different departments, in different groups, that require a lot of thinking and require long periods of uninterrupted time before you can even do the work, okay? So you might have something that's only a 4-hour actual task, but it takes you 30 days to do because of you're putting out fires, you're dealing with this, you get distracted, you come back, you do little bits of time, and it takes you 30 days to do this 4-hour task. And we think, okay, that's what it is. It's due in 30 days, it takes me that time. So time contraction would be, sure, maybe the 4 hours, you're actually able to do it now in 20 minutes of actual time. Okay, which is a measurement of savings, but you might not even be measuring that type of task anyways along that dimension. What's more important is you set out to do it in a meeting you're having and you completed it in the meeting you're having. Or you got it, you were going to do it, and you completed it the next day instead of 30 days later.
Yeah.
That's the time contraction I'm talking about. And that's super, super valuable. Super valuable.
100%. And when we're thinking about this strategy for employees, for the entire company, how does it differentiate, if at all, in terms of like an educational roadmap for folks on the executive team and leaders versus the rest of the organization?
Well, I think as a leader, you're going to want to focus on, the 20% that makes all the difference and try to ignore all the other stuff. I think as a leader, really focusing on using AI as a thought partner to solve complex strategic things. I mean, one of the things we do is we help organizations build a digital board of directors. So having a board of AI advisors that you can ask questions as a board. So for example, we have General George Patton on our board. And it's amazing how insanely accurate of type of response it can be. But that's using it as a thought leadership and being able to get different kind of opinions. And I mean, it's just super interesting to use it that way.
Yeah. I know, for example, and we work with clients that pick an industry leader in their space, that maybe a company that they sometimes aspire to be, or a previous leader in history, like you mentioned, that's been forerunner in their space, and doing exactly that and asking questions of that individual or that person in that company. And I think this kind of gets us into our next category as well. But, I think a lot of folks do just think about prompt hacks and, AI training is just kind of learning tricks of how to talk to ChatGPT. But I think you in the past have advocated for a much more structured approach, and something like Crit is, can you talk a little bit more about that? And I guess first part is like, let's maybe do a poll here. How many of you all know what Crit is and have used it before? Maybe a little poll. Put it on the right-hand side, you can get an answer. And Jason, while we're getting those responses in, why don't you go into a little detail both that of, overall, is training just learning a few tricks of how to talk to ChatGPT, or is it deeper than that? And then maybe go into a little bit of, what Crit is and how you used it in the past.
Yeah, a Crit framework, and there's a few different ones, but I definitely recommend Crit's just a very good way to kind of really get in more with AI, especially if you're using just basic prompts. But Crit stands for context, role, interview, and task. And one of the challenges when you prompt AI is giving it enough instruction. So you're setting the context for what's going on. You're saying what role you're wanting AI to be. You're making sure it interviews and asks you enough clarifying questions so that it's able to respond correctly. And then what do you want it to output? What is the task you're asking it to accomplish? Are you asking it to give you a pros and cons? Are you asking it to give you a single sentence, concise answer? And so using this type of framework to do prompting is really helpful as a starting point. And I've seen a lot of people who maybe weren't doing anything with AI start using Crit and just get really excited about its potential. Because I think when we think about hallucination, and which is basically when the AI kind of just, I don't want to say make stuff up because generative in its nature is making stuff up, but like it's giving you just wrong information. Using a framework like Crit will help reduce that hallucination effect.
Could you maybe give us an example of Crit and kind of how you would use it in kind of a specific context to solve something where it might be better than just a general question answer type thing inside of,
Yeah, I mean,
chat.
if you're just like, hey, I need you to write a marketing email, here's a draft, or here's what I'm trying to do, is you set the context and you say, we're launching a new feature that's letting customers integrate our software with their accounting systems. Our customers are mid-market CFOs who struggle with manual data entry. Okay, that's the context. Then the role, okay, who are you? You're a B2B SaaS marketing expert who writes clear, benefit-focused copy for busy executives. Interview, the key benefits: it saves 10 hours a month, it reduces errors. Make sure to ask lots of clarifying questions, but only ask 3 questions at a time so I don't get overwhelmed. And then what I want you to do is write a 150-word email with subject line, focus on time savings, have a clear CTA to schedule a demo. That would be kind of an example of a crit instruction. We actually built a crit agent, now that I'm thinking about it. So we built a crit agent to help write crit instructions. So that's the other thing, is once you get good at crit, you can actually make an agent we have a portal that we have where you can access all the LLMs, but there's lots of those type of things that exist. You can do that in Claude or ChatGPT, and you can make your own project that is the maker of the crit. So like, even if you're like, hey, I'm trying to write a marketing email, you could like make it so that it'll ask you all the questions it needs to generate the proper crit question or instruction set.
Yeah. And I've seen our folks do that too internally, is to write a basic prompt. Hey, put this into Crit Framework and then adjust it based of it. So just to.
I saw someone on the chat type, they use the role, goals, instructions, and guardrails. So again, it's very similar, same type
very
of thing.
similar.
But it gives you a way to use it, and I think that's why the education is important. And in a lot of the education, you're going to learn about these type of frameworks, because you don't want people to get discouraged. The AI is the worst it's ever going to be. And so even if you're kind of like doing things and the AI is kind of there but not better, or sort of there but not there yet, the more you're working with it, when a new model comes out, or as the architecture of AI orchestration improves, it can go from not good enough to better to like, okay, now this is really making a difference. And I think the other interesting thing, maybe interesting, what I just said, is there's oftentimes a lot of focus on the LLM and like, okay, is the LLM getting better? Large language models, I'm talking about like the Anthropic Claude or the ChatGPT or Perplexity's model or Gemini. Is it getting better, or will it reach a limit? But this is like so early days, right? So even the LLM is just one piece of the current orchestration architecture. And then over the next few years, the architecture will continue to be much more even than just what it is today in terms of where the LLM sits, and how the architecture starts working will improve how all this is working in general.
Yeah. And you mentioned, previously, like just getting started and doing things, and like from a training perspective too, instead of just having every single person go through the same training, while it is good to get a baseline, in the past, I think you've advocated for a little bit more of like a skills garden approach than just a generalist once you get past that initial literacy phase. Could you talk a little more about that maybe?
Yeah, I mean, even with section, there is definitely different courses that are department focused, function focused. Like if you're in finance, there's ones that focus more on finance and accounting. So definitely beyond the generalist AI, I would getting into some functional work. And then I always recommend you work in different modalities. So, okay, you're thinking about using a GPT and training on that, but like, do you know how to make images really well? Do you know how to make videos really well? Do you know how to do digital avatars, clone your voice? Do you know how to connect it all together? So you have a script written here in Claude and it comes across the HeyGen to make your video. You used 11 Labs to make the audio clone. maybe you used Runway to do the video and the video itself that's behind the avatar, and you kind of all lace it together. And so learning how to do all those things requires some experimentation and some time. But I think it's really helpful for people because there's a lot with avatar technology that keeps evolving, with voice cloning that keeps evolving, with video creation and image generation that keeps evolving, so that potentially things in your business that would have just been so economically unviable become possible when you can make full-blown video production for pennies compared to what it used to cost.
Yeah. So getting wider in terms of multimodal capabilities outside of that initial literacy, and then getting more specific in terms of your specialization, in terms of your role or deeper knowledge or things like that too. So two different
Well, and it
areas.
brings up and it ties back a bit maybe to what I was saying about it's changing the nature of work or has the potential to change the nature of work. Because if you think of an organizational chart, if you think about the functions of business, you're accounts payable, you're in accounting, you're in finance, you're in sales, you're in delivery, you're in operations, you're an analyst. These functions exist. In some ways, the departments in business exist because of limitations of humans. I don't really think about that, right? Like, why is business organized the way it is? Okay, and I'm not professing to be some expert at this. I'm just making some sort of observation that if you think about sales and finance, okay, you say, well, maybe because people or salespeople think a little different or different behaviors or different personalities. But when you throw AI into the mix, you have some pieces of stuff in finance that you might start doing in sales or vice versa. Or you might be using AI to do something that would traditionally be two separate humans because it's not going to be the same two humans that are doing these very disparate functions that are only disparate for humans. But when you add AI into the mix, that it's different. And so the more people understand this in your organization, I think the better off you're going to be. I think some of the companies that are really going to get ahead in whatever industry, okay, are going to figure out how to blur these lines, these legacy lines of structure and business in a way that gives them some outsized exponential advantage. That's what I think. I think that's going to be this kind of frontier we're entering into where you're going to see companies like if you're a 150 person company. Now, obviously this is industry specific because we're not at robots yet. So like if we're manufacturing 150 employees, okay, the AI as it stands today isn't necessarily going to swap them all out. But in a knowledge worker environment, if you have 150 workers, some company's going to figure out how to do that same thing with 25 workers. And it might very well look very alien in terms of organizationally, how they're structured, how their roles. Is the future a place where everyone's role is kind of AI orchestrator, agentic commander? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Agentic agent commander. Like that's everyone's role. And it's just about knowing how to tell the robots what to do.
And how to interact with multiple effectively AI employees in addition to the current ones. How does that type of approach, given that pressure that may be external and given that training, how does that help with employee engagement and retention?
In terms of with using AI to help with retention, or
well, just in terms of the training approach and bringing folks up to speed in the knowledge that these organizational shifts are going to be happening and that the use of AI, whether it's from competitors or internally, is going to be changing the way that they work as part of it.
Well, look, I think we mentioned it before about people being having fear of losing their job. But I think moving off of that fear, there's a lot of excitement. I mean, if this, I don't know what this is going to turn out to be. Is this going to be like the internet, pre-internet 94? Or I even heard recently, well, it's like the internet 96. Could it be better? And we're just going to see this profound change. Or is it more akin to electricity, like when the first homes were wired in 1882? I don't know. Nobody knows because nobody can tell the future. But the idea that we're dealing with something that could be maybe electricity level, super exciting. And if you understand that analogy and if you think about it, like it's really, really profound. It's really, really profound. And so I think from a retention perspective, you have the potential as a leader to just kind of get everybody on this journey with the company into a brave new world that may very well look very different than it does today or it did 10 years ago. And that's an exciting thing. I mean, sure, it's scary, but you break through the fear, and on the other side of that is excitement. And I think what is, it's okay. Like, okay, if they're scared of it, well, like, where are they going to go hide where it doesn't exist? The AI is permeating all the industry, all of society, all of the economy. So it's like, you make them excited about being on a journey at your company, well, then they're going to stay. Why are they going to go to a different company that's not even talking about AI? That's where I would be worried about losing my job. I'd probably be concerned about losing my job if it was at a company that wasn't talking about AI and wasn't doing anything. Because either that company is going to decline, or then when they do bring AI in, it'll be like to wipe us, to wipe all these jobs out type of thing. That's what I think.
Yeah. I think
so I don't know.
Too is when we talk about this, I think the biggest, most profound shift in all of this and what's driving it is just that information asymmetry is dead now, right?
100%.
There is no one that can't access the smartest and best AI in the world, including all of your employees, for $10 a month. So I know you've talked about in the past, counter AI, and really now how as a company, not just we get employees AI literate, what do we do now that all of our employees have access to the best AI in the world externally? All of our vendors have access to the best AI in the world. All of our customers have access to the best AI in the world. What is counter AI, and how does it a posture and affect kind of how we go forward now?
Yeah, I mean, the notion of counter AI was something I was thinking about that I hadn't really read about. And it's just this idea, if you think about in a military analogy, like everything has a counter weapon. You have armor, so you have armor-piercing rounds. You have radar, so you have stealth technology. You have missiles, so you have anti-missile defense. So there's always this like countermeasure developed against the measure. And so I think with AI, it follows the same thing. You're going to have, or you already have, your employees who are able to access knowledge of the top labor attorney and the top psychologist and organizational behavior specialist, and they can feed all of the emails and Slack and everything into these engines and come back with information, whether accurate or not, okay, that gives them a leg up. And that's true with your employees, it's true with your clients, it's true with your vendors, with your partners. And I think as an organization, you have to have some measures for that. One very simple example is, do you build an HR, a labor agent, some sort of agent in HR that every message and every Slack feeds through before it actually makes its way across to make sure it's compliant and not saying the wrong thing? Now, right now, today, that would be a little hard to do. but maybe directionally that's where it goes, because you need that kind of countermeasure to make sure that it you're kind of dealing with that. I mean, that's one thing. The other thing is there, and this goes to what you're talking a little bit about posture. We talk a lot. We help a lot of businesses develop and do AI strategy. What posture are they going to have? But part of that strategy is, well, okay, like how are you even going to handle when one of the stakeholders in your environment is using AI for something against you or at you? And there has to be some sort of strategic thinking. There has to be some playbooks that you develop for how you deal with it. Because look, there's a lot of AI slop. We all know. So it's easy for someone to get a whole bunch of slop together and throw it at you, but you still have to respond to it, especially if they're trying to do that in like a legal context. So just having these type of plans and countermeasures available, I think are important and will become more important.
Yeah. And then to take that even a step further in the positive direction outside of kind of counter, if this intelligence and information abundance and expertise is now everywhere, what was previously kind of a luxury or high value offering that can now be something that's affordable and available to kind of everyone in terms of their role and as a company?
You're asking like in terms of business or in general?
Yeah, mainly business, but in general, right? Now that information is everywhere and everyone has access to this as part of.
Yeah, everyone has access, so it's just an interesting kind of environment now.
And then as we kind of look forward to, right, and we think about as folks are at varying levels and as a company, you always kind of talk about self-assessment and framework. Where do most companies and CEOs kind of sit today in that AI maturity that you've seen so far?
Most organizations we work with and have spoken with are pretty early on the curve, which makes sense. It's kind of new. It's still quite early adopter. And I think over the next 12 months, it's going to start accelerating quite a bit.
And I think one of the things you hit on in terms of that maturity framework and other things is finding opportunities where you have kind of information bottlenecks. Can you give an information or maybe an example of an information bottleneck that once it's kind of removed, AI was able to really help start transforming either a department or part of the business or a particular role?
You mean information bottleneck in terms of from people at the company were having a bottleneck getting to information?
Either that way or from their capabilities as well.
So I think like one of the key things is analysis. There's two pieces, and this is something always even before AI is if you have data in a CRM or in a tool and you want to generate a report, we've got two things going on, three things potentially is how do I make the report? But like what question am I trying to ask with this report? Why am I asking for this report? Okay. How do I make the report? And how do I read the report and interpret what's happening? And there are times where you might be asking the wrong question of the data, and you might be interpreting the data incorrectly. So now with AI, as a thought partner, you can challenge or use it to help you make sure you're even asking the right question. Are you asking for the right metrics? Are you asking for it the right way? You can use AI to potentially dig into a data lake, dig into unstructured data, meeting notes, call notes, using like Whisper, Flow, or Plod, like any types of transcription stuff, meeting transcriptions, to give you a report, to basically take all this data, which could be mixed also with structured data from like a ERP or CRM or CX tool, and report on it. The way it could visualize or even report the data in itself could be elevated based on what AI knows of the best way to report on it. So like you might have asked for a bar chart or pie or something, and the best way is a different way to represent it. And then finally, like, okay, so here's the data. What does it mean? To help you understand it, to help you analyze it, and then help offer up next steps. In the case of a KPI, like next steps to potentially improve it. Now, when you couple that with like a crit framework approach, it can become even more powerful. When you couple that by creating an agentic orchestration where it has more knowledge about your specific company, your specific operations, everything you can about the company, it becomes even more useful and more powerful for your organization.
And when we think about other companies, whether it's competitors or employees or different folks using this, we know there's different data sets and maybe regulations and things like that. But in the past, you've kind of talked about potentially the risks of waiting for regulation, that regulation really isn't coming to save you. And kind of comparing that to social media and kind of the lag that was there. Why is it dangerous to potentially wait for rules and regulations to be kind of laid out in terms of how this is being used today from some external entity?
I mean, I think we just got a social media ban in Australia. But like society, social media ban, I think under 15 in Australia just came into effect. When did Facebook come out? Almost 20 years ago. So that's me saying no. Meaningful regulation is not coming. Someone else is going to figure it out. Other companies, other countries, other people, they're not going to have the fear. They're not going to care. Now, look, you have to have a strong security posture and a compliance posture and a set of policies for how you manage client data, your internal data, how you stay within appropriate confidentiality, but that's very much the same as your current security and compliance around data you have in your email, data you have in your CRM. But
given that regulation isn't coming from external sides, how do you balance then that need for integrated AI while still staying, SOC 2 or HIPAA compliant, maintaining data privacy?
Well, there's a couple ways to think about that. I mean, fortunately, you have the ability to not train the models. That's the easiest thing. There's a setting in them. I mean, you could use Enterprise GPT, you could use Enterprise Claude, and that's going to be SOC 2. That's going to have a certain compliance level. You can use the APIs or through a portal that's hosted in a compliant environment, like an AWS GovCloud, or using Bedrock for HIPAA compliance. And these are things that we help companies with. So there's lots of ways to have increased levels of security from an access perspective. I mean, and then you can also program in with like a company-wide orchestration framework deployment. You can program in guardrails. You can there are ways to program in if you don't want certain questions answered with it, or you don't, like, it can detect if you're trying to put something in there you shouldn't put in there. Like, you can do some of that stuff right now, and you should when it makes sense. But you can't have a policy that says you're not allowed to use AI. It's nonsense. I mean, people are going to use it on their phone. They're going to use it at home. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, given that, and that, like you said today, AI is the worst it's going to be, how should that realization change a CEO or a leader's tolerance for kind of early stage experimentation with these things?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think I think it depends on the culture of the company. If a culture of a company is also already kind of about innovation or or curiosity or creativity, these type of values already lend to kind of experimenting and fail fast, things like that. So if there's already this culture of like try stuff out, it doesn't work, try something else or iterate on it, I think it's going to be already like a natural kind of step into it. If you're in an industry or a company where it's much more structured and less experimenting and less kind of trying things at the margin, then it may be a little uncomfortable because you do have to experiment with the AI. You do have to try it. And you might try something today that then 9 months from now, you're like, okay, you know what? This is a lot better. Like I can now use what I've already learned. But you don't want to be in a place where once it's better, you don't even know what you're doing with it. You're starting from scratch. So you can't even, and you might not even recognize it's better enough then. That's the other thing 9 months later, if you haven't tried it. But looking, I mean, that's part of the learning process too, is just experimenting. Kind of like little kids will learn by doing things and falling down. I mean, you got to kind of do that with AI a bit. Encourage the team to try things out, to use AI every day. One of the things I did recently was I now have I have one-on-ones every week with my directs. Most of you probably do, or maybe every other week. But now I have a one-on-one every week with Jason AI, which is my digital clone. It's on the calendar. I meet with him or it or whatever it is. And I have like a little strategy session. Even so, that's interesting too, because it touches into like, what does it mean to be human? What does this mean for society? Like I'm treating the AI as it's a person and I'm having a one-on-one. And just that very act already is like building this pattern of understanding. I think eventually we maybe do that across the company, have everyone have to meet every week with their AI. And then eventually we're going to get to a place where AI is going to meet with other AI. So my agent's going to meet with your agent. I mean, that's some of the goofy stuff that can happen, right? Like, I mean, the goofiest thing, one of the goofier things we think about right now is you're going to be on a Zoom. How many months until you have the live interactive avatar and someone sends their AI clone to the Zoom? So you've got 5 humans. You already have the transcription stuff on there. Read AI, Otter, Spiky, the Zoom transcription. But you're in a meeting with 6 people, 6 screens, and one of them, then 2 of them are AI. People are sending their AI agents like they would send an assistant, right? Okay, that's kind of goofy. It's coming. But then the question is then at what point are there meetings and things happening autonomously where there's no human on the Zoom? No, they're probably not using Zoom when you get to that point because the AI doesn't have to. But like that's the world we're going towards. I mean, that's the thing with digital is in the realm where it's all digital, the AI can do a very good job.
It's moving quickly there. All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up
Yeah.
on this side too. So thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone else, for joining. As always, submit your questions, whether they're specific, tactical, or whether they're broader, more categorical, like this session was today. And we'll focus in on that. So thank you, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Bye.